The server approached Nora's table for the third time, her voice quiet but loud enough for the nearby customers to hear. "Are you sure he's coming? Or do you need to call someone?" Her eyes said everything. Pity. A woman at the next table leaned toward her friend, whispering just loud enough for Nora to read her lips. "Poor thing. She's been sitting there alone forever. Must have been stood up." The other woman lowered her voice, but Nora caught every word. "There's probably a reason he left. Who could deal with someone like that?"
I'm glad we came.
Nora stared at her phone. The message still glowed on the screen, sent 30 minutes ago. "Sorry, I don't think this will work. Good luck." 45 minutes of waiting. 1 cup of coffee gone cold, and the crushing weight of being invisible in a crowded room. But they didn't know what was about to happen. Because just as Nora reached for her bag to leave, a man and 2 children walked through the door. Nora Bennett worked at a small sewing shop on the edge of town, tucked between a hardware store and a laundromat that had been there since the 1970s. The shop smelled like fabric softener and old cotton, and the hum of sewing machines filled the air from morning until closing. She'd been there for 4 years, stitching hems and repairing zippers for customers who barely looked at her when they dropped off their clothes. Her hands were quick, precise. The owner, Mrs. Callahan, told new employees that Nora was the best seamstress they had. But Mrs. Callahan never said it to Nora directly. She wrote it on sticky notes and left them on Nora's workstation, yellow squares with neat handwriting that Nora would read and then throw away. The other women at the shop were kind enough. They smiled when Nora arrived in the morning. They waved when she left in the evening. But they never learned sign language. They never tried. When they needed to tell her something, they scribbled on scraps of paper or spoke slowly, exaggerating their lip movements in a way that made Nora feel like a child. She didn't blame them. Not really. It was easier to keep distance than to learn a new language for one person. Nora had been deaf since she was 7 years old. A car accident on a winter morning, black ice on the highway, her mother's sedan spinning into the guardrail. Her mother died on impact. Nora survived with a fractured skull and permanent hearing loss. The doctors told her father there was nothing they could do. The damage was done. Her father never remarried. He worked double shifts at the factory to pay the bills and came home smelling like oil and exhaustion. But he was the one who sat with her every night, teaching her how to read lips by holding a flashlight under his chin and mouthing words slowly until she understood. He was the one who told her she didn't need to hide. When Nora turned 18, her grandmother moved in with them. She had opinions about everything. She told Nora's father that it was dangerous to let a deaf girl go out alone. She said Nora should stay home, learn to cook, maybe take up knitting. Something safe. Something that didn't require talking to strangers. Nora's father disagreed. He told his mother that Nora was smart, that she deserved a life, that being deaf didn't mean being helpless. They argued about it for months. Nora sat at the kitchen table and watched their lips move back and forth, her name appearing over and over in the shape of their mouths. When she was 24, her father had a heart attack at the factory. He collapsed near the machinery, and by the time the ambulance arrived, he was already gone. Nora found out 3 hours later when a police officer came to the house and spoke to her grandmother. Her grandmother cried and gestured toward Nora, and the officer turned to face her, his lips forming the words she already knew were coming. At the funeral, her grandmother told her it was time to move home. Time to stop pretending she could live like everyone else. Nora didn't argue. She just packed her things and left 2 weeks later, renting a 1-bedroom apartment across town with the small inheritance her father had left behind. She never went back. The apartment was quiet. No one knocked on her door. No one called her phone. She went to work, came home, microwaved dinner, and sat by the window watching the street below. Sometimes she wondered if this was all there would ever be. A small life in a small room, invisible to everyone except the people who needed their clothes fixed. But there had been a time when she believed things could be different. It started with Patty, one of the older women at the sewing shop. Patty had worked there for 15 years and had the kind of blunt, no-nonsense personality that made her both intimidating and oddly comforting. She didn't tiptoe around Nora's deafness. She just wrote what she needed to say and moved on.
I'm not surprised.
One afternoon,
Always
Patty slid a note across the work table. It said, "You should try a dating app. My niece met her husband on one. It's not as weird as it sounds." Nora read the note and looked up. Patty raised her eyebrows, waiting. Nora shook her head and pushed the note back. Patty wrote again. "You're 28. You can't just work and go home forever. Trust me. I did that for 10 years and regretted it." Nora hesitated. Then she wrote back. "I wouldn't know what to say." Patty's response was immediate. "You don't have to say anything. Just be honest. Someone will appreciate it." That night, Nora downloaded the app. She spent 2 hours staring at the screen, trying to figure out what to write in her profile. Most people listed hobbies, favorite movies, things they liked to do on weekends. Nora didn't have hobbies. She didn't go to movies. She worked, went home, and existed in the space between. Finally, she wrote, "I'm deaf. I use ASL but can read lips well. Looking for someone patient." She posted one photo, a selfie she'd taken a few months ago at the park, sunlight coming through the trees behind her. She looked normal in it, almost happy. She uploaded it before she could change her mind. For 3 weeks, nothing happened. A few people swiped, but no one messaged. Nora told herself it didn't matter. She told herself she didn't care. Then Greg appeared. His profile said he was 32, worked in marketing, liked hiking, and trying new restaurants. His photos showed a clean-cut man with an easy smile, the kind of person who looked like he had his life together. Nora swiped, not expecting anything. He messaged her first. "Hi, Nora. I saw your profile. I think it's really cool that you're upfront about everything. I'd love to get to know you." Nora read the message 3 times. Then she typed back, "I just want to make sure you know I'm completely deaf. I can't hear anything. We'd have to communicate through text or writing, or ASL if you know it." His response came quickly. "That's totally fine. I'm not looking for perfect. I'm just looking for real." They texted for 2 weeks. Greg asked questions. He wanted to know what kind of work she did, what she liked to read, if she had family nearby. Nora answered carefully, keeping her responses short but honest. She didn't mention her father. She didn't mention how lonely her apartment felt. She just told him about the sewing shop, about the park she walked through sometimes, about the book she was reading. When he suggested meeting for coffee, Nora almost said no. But Patty's note was still stuck in the back of her mind. "You can't just work and go home forever." She said yes. They agreed to meet at Riverside Café, a small place near the water with big windows and outdoor seating. Nora arrived 10 minutes early and chose a table by the window where she could see the door. She ordered a coffee and sat with her hands folded in her lap, watching every person who walked in. Greg arrived exactly on time. He smiled when he saw her and crossed the room with the kind of confidence that made Nora feel both relieved and nervous. He sat down across from her, still smiling, and said something she couldn't quite catch. Nora pulled out her phone and typed, "I can't hear you. Can you speak slower so I can read your lips?" Greg glanced at the screen and nodded. He spoke again, slower this time. "It's nice to meet you." Nora smiled. "You too." For the first 5 minutes, it seemed fine. Greg asked her about the cafe, about how long she'd lived in the area. Nora answered, watching his face carefully. But she noticed the way his eyes kept drifting to his phone, the way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. She pulled out a small notebook and pen, the one she always carried, and wrote, "Is everything okay?" Greg looked at the notebook and nodded. "Yeah, sorry. Just a work thing." But he didn't put his phone down. Nora tried again. She wrote, "Have you been here before?" He glanced at the paper, then back at his phone. "No. First time." His answers were short. Clipped. He wasn't asking follow-up questions anymore. 10 minutes in, he stood up. "I'm going to use the restroom real quick." Nora nodded. She watched him walk toward the back of the cafe, past the counter, past the hallway where the bathrooms were, and straight out the side door. She waited. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Then 15. Her phone buzzed. A message from Greg. "Sorry, I don't think this will work. You seem nice, but this is too hard for me. Good luck." Nora stared at the screen. She read it twice. Then she set the phone down on the table, face up, and looked out the window. The server approached again, the same young woman who'd taken her order. "Are you sure he's coming? Or do you need to call someone?" Nora didn't answer. She just looked at the server's face, at the pity written across it, and felt something inside her crack. She could leave. She could stand up, grab her bag, and walk out the door like nothing happened. No one would blame her, but she didn't. Nora reached for her bag. Her fingers touched the strap, ready to pull it off the back of the chair. She could feel the eyes of the two women at the next table. She could see the server still standing nearby, pretending to wipe down an already clean counter. This was the moment she always took. The quiet exit, the retreat. She'd done it before, when her grandmother told her she'd never have a normal life, when classmates in high school stopped inviting her to things because it was too hard to include her, when her co-workers went out for drinks after work and forgot to write her a note about it. Every time she left, she went home. She told herself it didn't matter, but her hand stopped on the strap. She thought about her father. The night before he died, he'd been tired. Too tired to sign, too tired to write. But he'd looked at her across the kitchen table and mouthed the words slowly, making sure she saw every syllable. "You are enough, Nora. Don't let anyone make you feel like you're not." She'd nodded. She'd believed him in that moment. But after he died, it got harder to remember. Now, sitting in this cafe with cold coffee and a message from a man who couldn't even be bothered to say goodbye to her face, she felt the weight of those words again. Why was she the one who always had to leave? Why was she the one who had to apologize for existing? Greg was the one who lied. Greg was the one who walked out. But she was the one sitting here, feeling ashamed. Nora let go of the bag. She signaled the server, who hurried over with that same look of concern. Nora pulled out her notebook and wrote, "Can I get another coffee? Hot this time." The server blinked, surprised. Then she nodded and took the empty cup. When she returned with a fresh one, Nora opened the book she'd brought with her, a paperback novel she'd been meaning to start for weeks. She turned to the first page and began to read. The two women at the next table glanced over. One of them whispered something. Nora didn't care. For the first time in a long time, she stayed. Nora turned the page of her book, but the words blurred together. She wasn't really reading. She was just holding the book, keeping her eyes down, trying to convince herself that she belonged here as much as anyone else. The server returned, setting the fresh coffee down with a careful smile. Nora nodded her thanks and wrapped her hands around the warm cup. The heat felt grounding, real. But she could still feel the stares. The two women at the next table had stopped pretending to look away. One of them leaned closer to her friend, and Nora caught the movement in her peripheral vision. She didn't need to hear the words. She'd gotten good at reading body language over the years. The tilt of the head, the quick glance, the way people's mouths moved when they thought you couldn't understand. The first woman spoke, her lips forming slow, exaggerated shapes. Nora read them easily. "Poor thing. She's been sitting there alone for almost an hour now." The second woman responded, quieter, but not quiet enough. "There's probably a reason he left. I mean, who could handle that long term?" Nora's fingers tightened around the cup. She forced herself to keep her eyes on the book. Don't react. Don't let them see. The server appeared again, this time without being called. She approached Nora's table slowly, like someone trying not to startle a wounded animal. When Nora looked up, the young woman smiled, but there was something uncomfortable in it, something that made Nora's stomach twist. The server pulled out her phone and typed something, then turned the screen toward Nora. Are you okay? Do you need me to call someone for you? Nora stared at the message. The server's face was kind, concerned, but underneath it all was the same thing Nora had seen 1,000 times before. Pity. She didn't want pity. She didn't want to be someone people worried about. She just wanted to sit in a cafe and drink coffee like a normal person. Nora pulled out her notebook and wrote, I'm fine. Thank you. The server hesitated, clearly unsure whether to believe her. Then she nodded and walked back to the counter, glancing over her shoulder twice. Nora closed the book. She couldn't pretend anymore. She looked out the window, trying to focus on something else. Anything else. Outside, the street was quiet. A few people walked by, bundled in jackets against the autumn chill. The river beyond the sidewalk moved slowly, reflecting the grey sky. And then she saw them. A man and 2 children walking along the path near the water. The man was tall, dressed in a dark coat and jeans, his hands stuffed in his pockets. A little girl skipped ahead of him, maybe 5 or 6 years old, her hair pulled into a messy ponytail. A smaller boy trailed behind, holding a stuffed animal under one arm. The girl stumbled on the uneven pavement, catching herself before she fell. The man stopped and knelt down beside her, pulling a shoelace tight and tying it carefully. The boy wandered over and leaned against the man's shoulder, watching. It was such a small moment. Ordinary. The kind of thing that happened 100 times a day in 100 different places. But it reminded Nora of her father. She remembered being 8 years old, sitting on the front steps of their house, while her father tied her shoes before school. He'd always done it slowly, making sure she could see his hands, teaching her the loops and knots so she could do it herself one day. He never rushed. He never acted like it was a burden. Her throat tightened. She looked away from the window and down at her coffee. Her father had been gone for 3 years. 3 years of waking up and remembering he wasn't there anymore. 3 years of carrying his words with her. You are enough, Nora. And trying to believe them. But it was hard to believe when the world kept proving otherwise. Nora glanced back at the window. The family was still there, the man standing now, the little girl taking his hand. They started walking again, the boy running to catch up. She wondered if they were happy, if the man ever felt tired of it all, if the children knew how lucky they were to have someone who stopped to tie their shoes. And then, just as the thought crossed her mind, something else happened. The cafe door opened, and Greg walked past the window. Not into the cafe, past it. He had his arm around a woman Nora had never seen before, a blonde in a red jacket who was laughing at something he'd just said. Nora froze. They were walking toward the cafe next door, the upscale one with the outdoor heaters and the expensive pastries. Greg held the door open for the woman, still smiling, and they disappeared inside. Nora's chest felt hollow. He hadn't left because of work. He hadn't left because of some emergency. He'd left because of her. And 20 minutes later, he'd gone on another date. She set her coffee down before her hands started shaking. It wasn't the rejection that hurt. It was the ease of it. The way he'd walked out of her life and into someone else's without a second thought. Like she was nothing. Like the 45 minutes she'd spent waiting didn't matter at all. Nora reached for her bag again. This time, she meant it. She couldn't sit here anymore, pretending she didn't care, pretending she was fine. But before she could stand, the door to the cafe opened again, and the man and 2 children from the sidewalk walked in. The little girl noticed Nora first. She ran ahead of the man, her ponytail bouncing, and stopped a few feet from Nora's table. Her eyes were bright, curious. She lifted her hands and signed something. Nora blinked. She almost didn't believe what she was seeing. The girl signed again, slower this time, her small fingers forming the shapes carefully. "Hello. My name is Iris." Nora's breath caught. She set her bag down and signed back. "Hello, Iris. I'm Nora." Iris's face lit up. She turned and waved frantically at the man, who was still standing near the door with the little boy. He looked over, saw what was happening, and walked toward them. The boy followed, clutching his stuffed animal tighter. He couldn't have been more than 4 years old, his round face smudged with something that might have been chocolate. The man stopped a respectful distance from Nora's table. He signed an apology, his movements slower and less precise than his daughter's, but clear enough. "I'm sorry if they're bothering you. They just started learning ASL 6 months ago and get excited when they see someone who can sign." Nora shook her head. She signed back. "They're not bothering me. It's nice to meet them." Iris bounced on her toes. She signed again, her enthusiasm making her hands move faster than Nora could fully follow. The man gently touched her shoulder, slowing her down. He looked at Nora and spoke aloud, careful to face her so she could read his lips. "I'm Owen. This is Iris. And this is Leo." The little boy didn't sign. He just stared at Nora with wide eyes, half hidden behind his father. Nora pulled out her notebook and wrote, "It's rare to meet people who know ASL. Did you learn for work?" Owen glanced at the notebook, then back at her. His expression shifted, something quieter settling over his face. He signed his answer this time. "I learned for my wife. She was deaf. She passed away 2 years ago." Nora's chest tightened. She signed back. "I'm sorry." Owen nodded. He didn't elaborate. Instead, he gestured toward the empty chair at Nora's table. "Would you mind if we sat with you? The kids have been practicing, and they'd love to talk to someone who's fluent." Nora hesitated. Every instinct told her to say no, to keep her distance, to avoid getting pulled into something that might hurt later. But Iris was already pulling out the chair across from her, and Leo was climbing into the one beside it. Owen gave Nora an apologetic look, but there was something kind in his eyes, something that didn't feel like pity. Nora nodded. Owen sat down, and Iris immediately started signing questions. "Do you live here? Do you have a dog? What's your favorite color?" Nora answered each one, her hands moving easily now. It had been so long since she'd had a real conversation in ASL. Not just functional communication, but actual talking. The kind where someone asked questions because they wanted to know the answer. Leo didn't sign much. He just watched, his stuffed animal, a worn grey elephant, sitting on the table in front of him. Eventually he signed something very small, almost too quick to catch. "Hi." Nora smiled and signed back. "Hi, Leo." He ducked his head, but she saw the corner of his mouth lift. Owen ordered drinks for the kids and a coffee for himself. When the server brought them over, she glanced at Nora, clearly surprised to see her sitting with other people now. Nora ignored the look. While Iris chattered, Owen leaned back in his chair. He looked tired, Nora thought. The kind of tired that didn't come from one bad night, but from months, maybe years of carrying too much. He caught her watching and signed. "Sorry, they don't get to practice much outside of our house. Most people don't know ASL." Nora signed back. "It's fine. I don't get to use it much either." Owen tilted his head slightly. "You don't know other people who sign?" Nora shook her head. "Not really. I work at a sewing shop. No one there knows it." "That must be lonely." Owen signed. Nora didn't know how to respond to that. It was lonely. But she'd learned not to say it out loud. People didn't know what to do with that kind of honesty. Before she could answer, her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced down and saw a message from Patty. "Nora, I just saw you on Instagram. Greg posted a story about the date." "It's not good. You should know." Nora's stomach dropped. She picked up the phone and opened Instagram, something she barely used. She found Greg's account and clicked on his story. There was a photo of the cafe, taken from outside. It showed part of the interior through the window, and though her face wasn't fully visible, Nora recognized the angle. It was her table. The caption read, "PSA. Always be upfront about major things before meeting up. Just wasted an hour." There were already 12 comments. Nora scrolled through them, her hands trembling. "Bro, you dodged a bullet. Wait, what happened? Some people just aren't worth the effort, lol." One person had even replied with, "Is that the girl in the window?" Yikes! Nora set the phone down, her vision blurred at the edges. She could feel Owen watching her. She could feel Iris still signing something across the table, but the sound, or lack of it, closed in around her like water. Owen signed. "Are you okay?" Nora looked at him. At Iris. At Leo, who was now making his stuffed elephant walk across the table. They were kind. They were good. But she didn't belong here. She didn't belong anywhere. If she stayed, if she let herself believe this was real, it would only hurt more when it ended. She reached for her bag. Nora's hand closed around the strap of her bag. She started to push her chair back, ready to stand, ready to leave, before anyone could see the cracks forming. But Iris's hand shot out and touched her wrist. The little girl's face was serious now, her earlier excitement replaced by something quieter. She signed, slow and deliberate. "Are you sad?" Nora froze. Iris's fingers moved again. "You look sad. Did someone hurt you?" Owen leaned forward, about to intervene, but Nora shook her head at him. She looked at Iris, at the sincerity in the child's face, and felt something break inside her chest. She signed back. "I'm okay. I just need to go." Iris frowned. "But you didn't finish your coffee. It was such a simple observation. So innocent." But it hit Nora harder than anything Greg had said, harder than the comments on his Instagram story, harder than the pity in the server's eyes. Because Iris wasn't looking at her like she was broken. She was just asking a question. Owen cleared his throat, speaking aloud so Nora could read his lips. "You don't have to leave. I know we just met, but if something's wrong you can tell us. Or not. You can just sit here. No pressure." Nora looked at him, really looked. He had the kind of face that had seen loss. She could tell. It was in the set of his jaw, the lines around his eyes. He wasn't offering out of pity. He was offering because he knew what it felt like to need somewhere safe to sit. She let go of her bag. Iris clapped her hands together silently, then signed. "Can I show you something?" Before Nora could respond, Iris pulled a small notebook out of her father's jacket pocket. She flipped it open and showed Nora a drawing. It was a stick figure family. 3 people. A tall figure labeled Dad, a smaller one labeled Me, and an even smaller one labeled Leo. And off to the side, separate from the others, was another figure. It was taller than the kids, but shorter than the dad. Above it, Iris had written Mom in crooked letters. Nora's throat tightened. Iris signed. "I drew this yesterday. Dad says Mom is still with us even though we can't see her." "Do you think that's true?" Owen's face went pale. He started to reach for the notebook, but Nora gently shook her head. She signed to Iris. "I think your dad is right. People we love stay with us." Iris smiled. Then she flipped to a blank page, grabbed a crayon from her pocket, and started drawing again. This time, she added another figure to the family. When she finished, she turned the notebook toward Nora. The new figure stood next to Mom. Above it, Iris had written, Nora. Nora stared at the drawing. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know how to explain that she wasn't part of their family, that she was just a stranger who happened to be sitting alone in a cafe, that this moment would end and she would go back to being invisible. But Iris was already signing again. You're our friend now. Friends stay with us too. Owen looked at Nora, apology written across his face. He signed. I'm sorry. She's very direct. Nora shook her head. It's okay. But it wasn't okay. Because for the first time in 3 years, someone had made space for her without asking for anything in return. And she didn't know how to hold that. They stayed at the cafe for another 30 minutes. Iris asked Nora to teach her new signs, and Nora showed her the signs for happy, kind, and brave. Leo eventually worked up the courage to sign thank you when Nora complimented his stuffed elephant. Owen didn't say much. He just watched his kids, occasionally correcting their hand shapes, occasionally glancing at Nora like he was trying to figure her out. When Leo started to get restless, Owen stood. We should probably get going. It's almost dinner time. Iris groaned but didn't argue. She signed to Nora. Can we see you again? Nora hesitated. She wanted to say yes, but she also knew how these things went. People made promises they didn't keep. Plans fell through, and she'd be left waiting again. Owen seemed to sense her hesitation. He pulled out his phone and typed something, then showed her the screen. I teach an ASL class for parents at my kids' school. Most of us aren't very good yet. If you ever want to help out, we'd be glad to have you. No pressure. Just thought I'd offer. Nora read the message twice. It wasn't a date. It wasn't a big commitment. It was just an offer. She pulled out her notebook and wrote down her number. Owen saved it and sent her a text so she'd have his. Thanks for letting us crash your table, his message read. The kids haven't smiled like that in a while. Nora looked up at him. He wasn't smiling, but there was something softer in his expression now, something that made her feel a little less alone. She nodded. You're welcome. Iris hugged her before they left, a quick, impulsive squeeze that Nora barely had time to return. Leo waved shyly from behind his father. And then they were gone. Nora sat there for a long time after they left, staring at Owen's text message. She thought about deleting it. She thought about blocking the number and pretending this never happened. But she didn't. Instead, she opened Instagram and looked at Greg's story one more time. The comments had grown. 15 now. 20. People she didn't know, making assumptions about her life. She reported the story. Then she blocked Greg. It didn't erase what he'd done, but it was something. When Nora finally stood to leave, the server approached her one last time. The young woman smiled, and this time there was no pity in it, just a regular smile. Have a good night, the server said, speaking slowly so Nora could read her lips. Nora smiled back. You too. She walked out into the cool evening air, her bag slung over her shoulder, her hands tucked into her jacket pockets. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel invisible. 3 days passed before Nora heard from Owen again. She went to work each morning, sat at her sewing machine, and stitched hems while the other women chatted around her. Patty slid her the occasional note. You doing okay? Or, that guy was an idiot, by the way. And Nora would write back something short and non-committal. But in the evenings, when she got home to her quiet apartment, she'd pull out her phone and stare at Owen's contact information. She'd scroll up to read his last message. The kids haven't smiled like that in a while. She wanted to text him, but every time she started typing, her mind filled with reasons not to. What if he was just being polite? What if he never actually expected her to follow up? What if she showed up to help with the ASL class, and everyone looked at her the way the server had? like she was something fragile that needed careful handling. On the third night, her phone buzzed. It was Owen. "Hi, Nora. I know it's last minute, but we're having an ASL practice session tomorrow evening at 6. It's at Maplewood Elementary, room 12. If you're free and interested, we'd love to have you. No pressure either way." Nora read the message 4 times. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. She could say she was busy. She could ignore it. She could let the moment pass and go back to the safe, small life she'd built where nothing ever hurt because nothing ever happened. But then she thought about Iris's drawing. The stick figure labeled Nora, standing beside the one labeled Mom. "Friends stay with us too," she typed back. "I'll be there." Owen's response came quickly. "Great. See you then." Nora set the phone down and stared at the ceiling of her apartment. She'd committed now. There was no backing out. The next day at work, she could barely focus. She stitched a zipper in crooked and had to redo it twice. Patty noticed and wrote her a note. "Big plans tonight?" Nora wrote back. "Maybe." Patty grinned and gave her a thumbs up. When Nora arrived at Maplewood Elementary that evening, the parking lot was nearly empty. She sat in her car for 5 minutes, gripping the steering wheel, trying to convince herself to go inside. What if this was a mistake? What if she walked in and realized she didn't belong there either? But she'd already said yes. And she was tired of running. She got out of the car and walked toward the building. Room 12 was at the end of a long hallway decorated with the children's artwork. Through the small window in the door, Nora could see a group of 8 adults sitting in a circle. Owen stood at the front, demonstrating a sign. Iris and Leo sat cross-legged on the floor nearby, watching. Nora's hand trembled as she reached for the door handle. She pushed it open. Everyone looked up. Owen's face broke into a smile. He signed. "You came." Nora nodded. She stepped inside, and Iris immediately jumped to her feet and ran over, signing, "You're here. I told Dad you'd come." Leo stayed seated but waved shyly. Owen gestured to an empty chair in the circle. "We're just going over basic conversation signs. Please, join us." The other parents smiled at her, some signing hello, others just nodding. They looked like regular people, tired from work, juggling kids and schedules, trying their best. No one looked at her like she was broken. Nora sat down. For the next hour, she helped. She corrected hand shapes, demonstrated signs, answered questions. One of the parents asked how to sign, "I'm proud of you," and Nora showed them, her hands moving slowly so everyone could follow. Another parent asked if it was hard to learn to read lips. Nora pulled out her notebook and wrote, "It takes time, but people can help by facing me when they talk and not covering their mouths." The parent nodded thoughtfully. "I'll remember that." At the end of the session, Owen thanked everyone for coming. As the group dispersed, he walked over to Nora. He signed. "Thank you. You were great. The parents really appreciated it." Nora signed back. "I'm glad I could help." Owen's expression shifted, something more serious settling over his face. He signed. "Can I ask you something?" Nora nodded. "Why did you say yes?" "To coming here, I mean." "You didn't have to." Nora thought about it. She could give him an easy answer, something simple and safe. But standing there, in a classroom that smelled like crayons and old books, with Iris and Leo watching from across the room, she decided to tell the truth. She signed. "Because I'm tired of being invisible." Owen didn't look away. He didn't offer empty reassurances or try to tell her she wasn't invisible. He just nodded, like he understood exactly what she meant.
I heard she
Then he
completely
signed.
messed up the presentation yesterday.
"You're not invisible here."
Honestly, I'm not
Iris
surprised.
ran over and
She
tugged on
always looks
Nora's
so
sleeve.
fragile.
She signed. "Can you come back next week?" Nora looked down at the little girl, at her hopeful face, and felt something shift inside her chest. It wasn't a big shift. It wasn't life-changing, but it was something. She signed. Yes, I'll come back. Iris beamed. Leo gave her a thumbs up from across the room. Owen walked her to the parking lot afterward. The evening air was cool, and the sky had turned a deep orange. He typed something on his phone and showed her. I know this might sound strange, but I'm glad we met you. The kids have been through a lot, and it's been hard to find people who understand. You don't have to carry that for us, but I wanted you to know it means something that you're here. Nora read the message and felt her throat tighten. She typed back, I've been through a lot, too. It's nice to be around people who don't treat that like a problem. Owen read her message and nodded. He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. Nora got into her car and watched as Owen and the kids walked to theirs. Iris waved through the window, and Nora waved back. As she drove home, she thought about the cafe, about Greg's Instagram story, about all the years she'd spent believing she had to shrink herself to fit into a world that didn't want to make room for her. But tonight, someone had made room. And for the first time in a long time, she let herself believe it might last. The next week, Nora went back to the ASL class, and the week after that, and the week after that. It became part of her routine. Work during the day, class on Thursday evenings. The parents started recognizing her, greeting her with signs they'd practiced. One woman brought her homemade cookies as a thank you. Another asked if Nora would be willing to tutor her daughter, who was struggling to keep up in school because of a hearing impairment. Nora said yes. Owen started texting her outside of class. Not often, just occasional updates. A photo of Iris's latest drawing. A video of Leo successfully signing good morning for the first time. Small things. But they made Nora smile. One evening after class, Owen asked if she'd be willing to meet with the school's principal. A new student had enrolled, a boy who was completely deaf, and the school wanted to make sure they were providing the right support. Nora met with the principal the following week. The woman was kind, genuinely interested in learning how to make the classroom more accessible. Nora gave her a list of suggestions: visual aids, a sign language interpreter, seating arrangements that allowed the boy to see the teacher's face. The principal took notes on everything and thanked Nora. Then she asked if Nora would be interested in coming in once a week to work with the boy directly. Nora didn't hesitate. Yes, it wasn't a paid position, not yet, but it was something. It was purpose. It was visibility. At the sewing shop, Patty noticed the change. She slid Nora a note one afternoon. You seem different lately. In a good way, Nora wrote back. I feel different. Patty smiled. Good, you deserve it. One Saturday, 3 months after the day at the cafe, Owen texted her. The kids want to know if you'd like to come to the park with us. No pressure, just thought I'd ask. Nora looked at the message for a long time. She thought about saying no, about keeping boundaries, about protecting herself from the inevitable moment when this all fell apart. But then she thought about Iris's drawing, about Leo's shy waves, about Owen's quiet understanding. She texted back, I'd like that. They met at the park near the river, the same one Nora used to walk through alone. Iris and Leo ran ahead, chasing each other around the playground. Owen and Nora sat on a bench, watching them. Owen signed. They talk about you all the time. Iris wants to be a teacher when she grows up. She says she wants to teach people to sign, like you. Nora signed back. She'd be good at it. Owen smiled. She would. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Owen signed. Can I ask you something personal? Nora nodded. That day at the cafe, when we met you, you looked like you were about to leave. What made you stay? Nora thought about it. She could tell him about Greg, about the Instagram story, about the years of feeling like she didn't belong anywhere, but instead, she signed something simpler. I stayed because Iris asked if I was sad, and I realized I was tired of pretending I wasn't. Owen nodded slowly. I get that. Nora looked at him. Do you? Pretend, I mean. Owen's expression softened. He signed. Every day, for the kids. They need me to be okay, so I am. Most of the time. And the rest of the time? Owen didn't answer right away. He watched Iris help Leo climb the ladder to the slide. Then he signed. The rest of the time, I remember that it's okay not to be okay. Ruth taught me that. Nora's chest tightened. She signed. She sounds like she was a good person. She was. Owen signed. I think she would have liked you. They stayed at the park until the sun started to set. Iris convinced Nora to push her on the swings, and Leo showed her how high he could climb on the jungle gym. Owen took a photo of the three of them and sent it to Nora later that night. In the photo, Iris was mid-laugh, Leo was grinning, and Nora was smiling, really smiling, for the first time in what felt like years. She saved the photo.
I'm glad we came.
3 months later, Nora walked into Riverside Café for the first time since the day everything changed. She'd thought about avoiding it. It would have been easier to find a different coffee shop, a different place to sit and read on Saturday mornings. But she didn't want to run anymore. She walked in and chose the same table by the window. The server, the same young woman who'd asked if she was okay that day, approached with a smile. She signed, slow and careful. Hi, Nora. What can I get you? Nora blinked. Then she signed back. You learned ASL? The server nodded, looking a little embarrassed. Just the basics. I'm not very good yet, but I wanted to try. Nora felt something warm spread through her chest. She signed. You're doing great. Can I have a latte? The server grinned. Coming right up. Nora opened her book and settled into her chair. The cafe was busy, filled with the usual Saturday morning crowd. People typing on laptops, couples sharing pastries, parents wrangling toddlers. She didn't feel invisible anymore. The two women who'd whispered about her that day were sitting at the same table. Nora noticed one of them glance over, and for a moment their eyes met. The woman looked away quickly, then leaned toward her friend and said something Nora couldn't quite catch. But this time, Nora didn't care. The server brought her latte and set it down with a smile. Nora thanked her, and the server signed back. You're welcome. Nora took a sip of her coffee and looked out the window. The river moved slowly, catching the morning light. A family walked by, a father and 2 children. They weren't Owen and his kids, but they reminded her of them. Her phone buzzed. A text from Owen. Iris wants to know if you're free tomorrow. She's working on a surprise and wants to show you. Nora smiled and typed back. Tell her I'll be there. She set the phone down and returned to her book. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like she was waiting for something to happen. She wasn't waiting for someone to see her or validate her or make space for her. She'd made space for herself. And when Iris ran up to her the next day, holding a hand-drawn card that said, Best Teacher Ever, in wobbly letters, Nora realized something. She wasn't invisible. She never had been. She'd just been waiting for people patient enough to look.